Hello, I'm Ollie and this is CriminOlly, where I talk about crime, pulp, horror, that kind of thing. Today, readathons and personal challenges. It's my April TBR. Okay, let's get the personal challenges out of the way first then. So I need to complete my 50 books before I'm 50 project this month. I have got, I think, 18 books still to go. So a number of the books, the majority of the books on my TBR this month go towards that challenge. I will also be finishing my Read What You Own challenge this month, where I'm reading 100 books I already own before I buy any new ones. So I've only got about 12 books left to go on that. So I will definitely finish that this month as well. In terms of other commitments then, so I run 2 book clubs, as you may know. So I run my Patreon book club and also my birth year book club. So both of those will be reflected in this TBR too. And then I'm also taking part in 2 reading events this month. So if you don't know, there are always tons of really interesting reading events going on YouTube. It's difficult to keep track of all of them sometimes, and it's certainly probably impossible to take part in all of them. But there are 2 I really wanted to support this month. So one is Trans Girl April, which is being run by Say Kevy and Willow from the channel Books and Bow. So this is as the name suggests, this is a readathon devoted to supporting trans and non-binary authors. Willow and Kevy have both put up some great videos with suggestions of books you might want to read. I'm going to take part in their doing 2 like group reads for the event, so I'm going to take part in both of those. And I've also got another book in my TBR that is by a trans author. And then the other one is Old School April, which is being run by Kelsey from the channel Slime and Slashers. So Kelsey's channel is kind of a horror themed channel, but with a particular interest in nostalgia, so particularly 90s nostalgia. Now the 90s for me doesn't feel that long ago, but clearly for younger people it feels longer ago. So this readathon is themed around kind of nostalgia, vintage horror, things like that, and there's also a watch-a-thon element to it as well, so you can watch movies for it as well. So I'll link to the videos for Old School April and Trans Girl April in the description for this. For Old School April, there's a bunch of different prompts, and I've just about managed to fulfill all of them. I've still got 2 gaps, which I'm going to have to try and figure out during the month how I do, but I've already got 23 books on this list for April, which is a lot, and that's largely because of this blooming 50 book challenge, or 50 before I'm 50 challenge I put myself on. So anyway, let me go through what I'm going to be reading. To make it easier, I'll do it in the order I've just talked about things. So let's do book clubs first. So for my birth year book club, so this is a book club I run. Anyone's welcome to join. It's hosted on my Discord server. So I've got like a Discord community where people can hang out and talk about books completely free. And we've been reading books recommended by people as their favourite book that was published in the year they were born. So this month's pick for that is Welcome to Dead House by R.L. Stine, which was the first of the Goosebumps books. That nicely ties in with Old School April, which is partly by design. So one of the prompts for Old School April is to read any Goosebumps book. I'm actually double dipping with this book because one of the other prompts for Old School April is to read any horror book published in the 90s, which this was. So I get a two for one on that one. So yeah, if you'd like to read along with us and join in the discussion, you're welcome to join my Discord and chat about it. My other book club then is my Patreon book club. So that's for people who subscribe to me on Patreon. We are going to be reading a book called Transmuted by Eve Harms, which is a short horror novella, which looks fantastic. It's from the Rewind or Die series of horror stories, which have the few I've read from that series have been really good. So it's not a series in terms of you have to read them in order or anything like that. It's just a series of similarly themed books. So Eve Harms is a trans author. So this also works for Trans Girl April. So really looking forward to that. Looks like a really interesting read. So moving on to other books for Trans Girl April then. So as I said, I'm going to be taking part in the group read for that. So one of those, the 2 group categories for that rather. So one of those books is Felix Ever After by Kaysen Callender, which is a YA novel that looks really fun. It's had really great reviews, supposed to be, kind of moving and uplifting. It just looks like a really interesting and enjoyable read. The other one is a new book that comes out, I believe, this month, Any Other City by Hazel Jane Plant, which I don't know a great deal about. But I think Kevy has read another book by Hazel Jane Plant and loved it, so it comes with that recommendation. So yeah, looking forward to diving into that one as well. Moving on to Old School April then. So I've already talked about Welcome to Dead House for Old School April. The other books I will be reading for Old School April are, so the first one, and some of these they might feel a little bit iffy, but I think I can just about excuse them or justify them against the prompts I'm reading them against. So the first one is, hold on, because I've got a physical copy of it. Let me find it. So the first one is Double Indemnity by James N. Cain, which I've been wanting to read for ages. So he's a kind of classic noirish thriller. One of the prompts for Old School April is to read, well, there's various different things you can read in this prompt, but one of them is a book with an old school vibe. So given that it came out in, I think, the 1930s, I think this has definitely got an old school vibe. Next one then I'm reading for Old School April. So the prompt is Nostalgic Technology. Read a book featuring older technology on the cover or in the story. So this one is definitely a bit iffy. So the book I'm going with this for this is The Godwolf Manuscript by Robert B. Parker, which is the first of his Spencer novels. So this is a mystery novel that centres around an ancient manuscript. So I figure that ancient manuscripts are a form of very nostalgic technology. So I'm justifying that one to myself on that basis. Next one for Old School April then is so the prompt is Teen Witch. Read a book with magical elements, witches, cursed objects, occult supernatural elements, etc. So for that one I'm going to go with The Thicket by Jo R. Lansdale, which is a kind of a horror western. So this is a book I've had on my Kindle for ages, which comes highly recommended. Jo R. Lansdale is an author who hasn't let me down yet. So yeah, looking forward to trying that one out. And then next up we have another prompt for Old School April. Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Read a storybook with a female protagonist or a book story written by a woman. So for that one, and continuing my Patricia Highsmith project that I'm doing with Anne Novella, I'm going to read A Game for the Living, which I think is set in Mexico. Yep. So the next book in order of publication as we read through Highsmith's work. So looking forward to that one. Okay, next up for Old School April then, the next prompt is Mood Read. So a book published in or set in 2003 or before. So for this one, I'm going to go with The Crow Road by Ian Banks. Again, a book I've been meaning to read for years and years and years. I've really loved the Ian Banks books I've read. So looking forward to reading this one, which was a bit of a breakthrough book for him. It was made into a TV show and things like that. So one of his first really big hits, I think. And then one more prompt for Old School April. So a bonus prompt, which is read a book with neon on the cover. So I've actually already mentioned this book. So it's Transmuted by Eve Harms, which has this lovely pink neon on the cover. So I'm going to read that one. So that one therefore fulfills 2 different readathons and my Patreon book club. So I'm triple dipping with that one if that's possible. Okay, before I get into the general stuff, I've also got a buddy read I'm doing. So every month I do a buddy read with one of my patrons. This month it's with my patron Horrorlass, and the book she's chosen for is Pedro Paroma by Juan Rolfo, which I'm really looking forward to reading. So Juan from the channel Played by Visions, this is his favourite novel. So I've had a copy for a while, but I haven't got around to it yet. So looking forward to doing a buddy read of that one. So that's all the stuff for buddy reads, group reads, book clubs, readathons, etc, etc. So now just getting into the general stuff. So let me go through those. So first up we have Prayer for the Crown Shy by Becky Chambers. So the second of the Monk and Robot books. So I read and reviewed the first one of those a little while ago on the channel. Absolutely loved it. So really looking forward to reading this. So kind of cozy sci-fi, I guess you'd call it. But yeah, very much looking forward to that one. Next up in my mission to read more kind of classic crime, I've got The Real Cool Killers by Chester Himes, the second of his Harlem cycle of novels. So I read A Rage in Harlem a little while ago, really enjoyed it. So yeah, looking forward to diving into that one. Next, a classic thriller, The Quiet American by Graham Greene. So Greene is an author I've only read a couple of things by, but enjoyed both of those. So really looking forward to reading one of his kind of espionage type novels and seeing what that's like. After that, a rare piece of non-fiction for me. One of those books that's, not just a good book, but an important book. So the book is If This Is a Man by Primo Levi. So his account of the Holocaust. So expecting this to be a very difficult read, but nevertheless really looking forward to reading it. Moving on then, so diving into, I've got 3 of these lovely Library of America editions next to me. So first up, I'm going to be reading Dark Passage by David Goodis, which came out in, I think, the 40s. So I've only read one thing by David Goodis, but I absolutely love that. I can't remember what it was called now. The Wounded and the Slain, I think, which was really fantastic. So looking forward to reading more of his stuff. Then again from a Library of America volume, so I've been reading through this Philip K. Dick volume. So I've read The Man in the High Castle a few months ago. So moving on to The Three Stigmata of Palmer Eldritch. Now I read a load of Philip K. Dick books back in my kind of teens and 20s, but I cannot for the life of me remember if that's one I read or not. I definitely had a copy of it, but I can't remember if I read it. So looking forward to a bit more kind of experimental sci-fi from Dick. Moving on then to a Kindle book. So one of the things I'm trying to do with this 50 Books Before I'm 50 challenge is start reading, or at least sample some notable crime series that I hadn't managed to get to yet. So I'm going to be reading the first of the Martin Beck books, Rosanna, which is by Marge Showal and Per Wallou. Apologies if I'm butchering those names. So yeah, the Beck series is supposed to be fantastic. So really looking forward to reading this, the first of those. Next up then, The Second Suspect by Heather Lewis. So her novel Notice, which I reviewed on the channel a while ago, remains the most disturbing book I've ever read, and also remains probably the reason why many of you are watching me now, because that video was extremely successful. So The Second Suspect is her kind of reworking of the same story into more of a detective story. So interested to see what that's like. Back to Library of America. So I've been working through the Philip Marlowe books, so I'm going to be reading the next of those, which is The Lady in the Lake by Raymond Chandler, obviously. So really enjoying the Marlowe books so far. Classic crime, classic hardball prose. Oh, very enjoyable. Okay, next up then. So I don't know what I'm going to make of this one, because I didn't particularly enjoy the second book in the series, but I've got now that I'm 2/3 of the way through the series, I feel obliged to finish it. So that's Return of the King by J.R.R. Tolkien. I figure I ought to have read the whole of the Lord of the Rings before I turned 50. So yeah, the first book I really enjoyed. The second book dragged a fair bit for me. So hopefully hopefully Tolkien will pick up the pace a bit for the climax. Right, we're nearly there. So next up, 2 more series where I'm going to be reading the first book in the series. So I'm going to be reading Cover Her Face by P.D. James, which is the first in the Adam Dalgleish series of mysteries. And then Faceless Killers by Henning Mankell, which is the first in the Wallander series of mysteries. So yeah, really looking forward to both of those. Both, very well respected authors, very much loved series in the crime genre. So yeah, can't wait to read both of those. And then the final book, and some might say that I've saved the best for last, is The Grapes of Wrath by John Steinbeck. So, a much-loved classic. I've really enjoyed the Steinbeck I've read in the past. This one a bit longer than the other ones I've read. I've tended to read his shorter stuff. So yeah, really looking forward to this and seeing what all the fuss is about. So definitely a busy reading month for me. 23 books there. It's about 5,500 pages, but really looking forward to all of them. They all sound like fantastic books, and many of them, as I say, are ones I've had on my list to read for a long time. So whether I will get through them all or not remains to be seen. But yes, wish me luck. I'm not going to do a random book from the shelves today because I've been talking for too long and my throat is sore. But yeah, hopefully you enjoyed that. Let me know if you've read any of these books and what you thought of them. And as always, thank you very much for watching. Hope you're safe and well out there. Hope you're really good stuff. And I'll speak to you again very soon. Cheerio.